Well, we are with Kevin Blue of UC Davis, the athletic director at the Collegiate Sports Summit. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sitting down and joining us. And really interested to hear from you as a athletic director at Davis. What is your leadership mantra that you, or do you have one that you sort of live by?
Well, I wouldn't call it a mantra, but we do on a very regular basis explicitly focus on our organizational culture. You know, I'm in my 9th month there now, and I came into a situation where there had been some mixed results and some mixed morale in the organization, and that's a reality across the country in many athletic departments, and we've been really focused on building a culture. We call it our winning culture of togetherness, and we really focus on it as an explicit top priority.
So you've had that journey that a lot of people dream of, where you got a shot at Stanford. Well, tell us a little bit. You came up through Stanford, and then you got your first AD job, which is what a lot of people, that's the journey they want. So tell us first a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I was a Stanford undergraduate student, played golf there, was fortunate to have the opportunity to come down from Canada to attend Stanford and play golf on a scholarship. And I graduated in 2005. My original goal was to be a sports psychologist on the PGA Tour. So I went to grad school. I did a PhD in sports psychology at Michigan State. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to do a lot of sports psychology coaching in the pro golf world. I also tutored in the athletics program while I was a graduate student. And I enjoyed that a lot. Towards the end of my time as a graduate student, I decided that the business side of sports was more interesting to me. So I made my way back to the Stanford Graduate School of Business and eventually caught on at Stanford in an entry-level role. I got the opportunity to work for Bob Bowlesby, who at the time was the athletic director, doing a bunch of business analysis projects and some things that were, it turns out, pretty helpful and important for our organization. And I was there for, I guess, 7.5 years, moved my way through the organization. I had some really good opportunities under Bernard Muir as well, and ultimately took the AD job at Davis in June of 2016.
So in your first time leading the department now, what have been your biggest lessons learned in these first 9 months?
Well, a lot. I mean, I think that it's people were, as I was sort of going through the process, people were talking about how different the AD chair is from a senior associate or deputy role. And I think for me, one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm still learning, I'm still very, very new in the AD chair, but one of the things that I've really noticed is how you get pulled in various directions and how to manage your time, attention, and energy, and really being disciplined about focusing. Right, there's an infinite amount of work to do. There's an infinite amount of priorities, it seems, and trying to be really disciplined about being clear about what are the priorities and how do we create a situation organizationally where we can really attack those priorities. So I'm learning how to do that, and it's exciting. It's fun. It's challenging, but it's not. I think for people that have the energy and that have the desire and can maintain an openness to being wrong and to learning, I think it's certainly a challenge that is you can tackle it. It's doable.
Do you have a couple of core principles that are important to you or in the way you operate or what's important to you?
Yeah, well, we talk a lot about the idea of excellence, and that word can lose its meaning when it's overused, but we use the image of a normal distribution curve. Like, I guess the stat nerd in me likes to talk about the normal distribution curve and the fact that most behavior and most organizations and sort of most athletes and most managers cluster towards the middle by definition. And what we try to do is be intentional about identifying what's normal, what would be in the middle of that normal distribution, and then what does an outlier on the right look like? And what are the tangible differences between normal and excellent? And again, by definition, performing at an excellent level or doing things in an excellent way means deviating from what is normal. So just being comfortable with that thought process is something that I think is really important organizationally, and it's something that we really talk about a lot.
And does that also tie into hiring and all of those things, thinking about it in that way?
Yeah, I think that Absolutely. It's trying to be really clear in your thinking about what is the sort of level of either performance or qualification or even interaction style. Like what would it look like in a normal organization, in a normal situation, and then how is that different if you aspire to be excellent? And we try to be really specific about that in how we go forward. With respect to hiring, I think that we often, what I've learned is that the most important thing, and I'm obviously young and still learning, but the most important thing I've identified so far is being really clear about what is the standard or the hurdle that a candidate needs to get over, and being really clear in your mind about the level of quality that you expect. And then once a candidate gets over that, or if multiple candidates get over that, the decision about who to hire becomes a lot easier, right? If you're confident that one or more of your candidates is going to meet the high expectation that you have, in theory, picking who should be less of a difficult decision because you are confident that one of them at least will be over that hurdle. And then the question becomes, make sure that you don't have a false positive, and make sure that you identify, in which situation are you most likely to have made the wrong judgment, and stay away from that one.
I can see the psychology major coming through here. No, it's good. I mean, it's just interesting to hear your process through that. We hear, because in a profession that traditionally hasn't had a lot of diversity, and so whenever now whether it's women or whatever, and then for your age, you said I'm young. I believe you're the youngest. Are you the youngest Division I AD now? Are you taking the
I
role?
don't know. I don't think so. I think Jacksonville may have I'm 34 now. I was 33 when I got the job.
You're close.
I think so.
You're definitely in that 10% down on one side of the curve, right?
Yeah, people are surprised often by sort of, I'm young and look young, so I think.
So how, with that, and I know, age doesn't, define anything, but is that something you're proud of? Do you think of? Do you feel like you need to prove yourself and what you can do, or do you just put that to the side?
It's an interesting question. I prefer to put it to the side, but as is the case in anything, often there are prejudgments made about various characteristics of a person, and knowing and understanding that is, I think, important. For me, what often happens is that I'll be in a situation where, my youth is something that's a topic, but after we start working, then that fades away. But when I get into new situations, I have to remember that that's new for the next person, et cetera. So I prefer not to think about it. It is a reality, and I actually think it's a positive in a lot of respects. I think in today's day and age, it takes a lot of energy to do this job very well. The cliche is it's a 24-hour, 7 days a week job. You do have to work really hard, and I think being able to focus singularly in some respects is an advantage.
Now that you're in the AD chair, if you were, speaking to somebody who's trying to make that journey you did, can you point back to a couple of key points along the way for you that really made the difference in you getting this opportunity now? Yeah,
that's another really good question. I think that, I'm not an expert. I've only been around college athletics for, I guess, 8 or 9 years now. So I don't have as much hindsight as others, or as much perspective as others, and I'm aware of that. I think that the important thing you can do as you're going through the process and you want to be an athletic director is just excel at what you're doing. You just have to be really good at it, right? It's just and that often takes hard work. And of course, learning from others who have more experience is really important. I've been fortunate to have good mentors in the 2 athletic directors that I worked for at Stanford, and what I observed at Michigan State as well was really helpful.
What did you take from them? Like, what pieces did you take from Bernard and from Bob?
So Bernard's work ethic is really, he sets a great example. He works very, very hard. He also has a way of, that I learned a lot from him interpersonally. I think he's very good at putting people at ease while also being firm and assertive. And that's a skill that I think he's refined over several years, and it's one that I seek to emulate as I mature in this role. Bob was very and remains very experienced. I think his style of leadership it was something that I had a lot of respect for. You know, I think he was able to articulate and translate his experience from his years at Northern Iowa and ultimately Stanford into something that was accessible for younger staff who are trying to learn the business in an efficient way. And he sort of had enough experience to be able to understand the perspectives of everybody in a particular situation. And as a result, he was highly effective and remains that way. So, two great role models. And I guess another thing that is important when you're coming up is to try to learn vicariously through others, right? There's only 24 hours in a day, and realistically, you're not awake for all 24 hours. So, if you're trying to learn a lot of things in a short amount of time and make progress, you have to be really good at learning through others and through the experience of others.
And then I just want to talk to you about, Stanford to Davis. That's a shift in worlds, at least in the college athletic space, and you're getting a different perspective now, yep. I presume, at Davis. And so, curious your thoughts sort of on this landscape. It's an interesting time for Division I. There are different levels with different needs, different resources, and I think trying to figure out how that all lives under one tent, if you will, of this Division I. And have you reflected on that at all as you are in the daily work of Davis? Yeah,
so I try not to get tied up in the conference and governance issues yet. Like I really am just trying to focus on our organization and doing my best for our organization. But there are a few observations that I have made recently about the differences in level. One of them is I think that the importance of highly skilled management and leadership of entry-level staff that's more of a critical factor for success at the FCS level, because the finances of the FCS organizations are such that often there are entry-level staff. It's often at those entry-level frontline positions you are hiring younger staff that don't have as much experience. So the quality of somebody's, like a more senior person, the quality of their ability to mentor and bring those people along quickly is a big determinant of success. This is across the board, whether it's administration, sports medicine, any number of programs, football, right? We have in Dan Hawkins a highly experienced veteran coach who at our level understands the importance of mentoring some of our other coaches who are really, really good coaches, but not as experienced in terms of seeing different situations. That's different than at the FBS level where in a lot of frontline positions or positions that are in the trenches, a lot of those schools have people who have much more experience, and as a result, they're more self-sufficient. And sort of management is always going to be important, but it's a really, really important thing at the FCS level to drive organizational success, in my view.
Excellent. Anything that I didn't have the good sense to ask you that you think would be really valuable to people aspiring to this position?
I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and working hard is really important. But I think that as people come up, like I think I'm probably one of the first millennial athletic directors, and the way that we view the world is not the same as a lot of people in our industry. And there's a lot of things that obviously young people can learn from veterans. At the same time, I think it's important that our generation of leaders has the courage and the discipline to bring the things the way that we view the world to the industry as the industry evolves, right? It cannot stay the same. It has to, the only constant in really the world is change. And I think that the way that we, as younger leaders in college athletics, view issues in a more contemporary fashion than has traditionally been the case, I think that's important. And I can tell from just being at this event with a lot of veterans that I'm trying to learn from that it's easy to get pulled in a direction that is kind of the status quo. And there's a lot of important things that need to be derived from that and a lot of lessons to be learned. But also I think that if we aren't making contributions to help advance college athletics and modernize it, that we're doing everybody a disservice. So I would encourage, I guess, myself and everybody to continue to try to think about how our worldview as kind of younger leaders can help the industry overall.
the next generation. And that was my last question. But if you had to, flip that and they're learning from you, what is one or two things as a representative of that millennial generation coming into the role that you think they could benefit to
Well,
know?
I mean, most of the people at this conference have forgotten much more than I know, so I hesitate to pretend like I'm teaching them anything. But the one observation I've had is that we all have demographics challenges in our fan and donor bases, and that's a significant problem in the future. If we don't create experiences and ways of engaging younger alums or mid-career alums and donors, we are going to have a demographics skew that is unmanageable in terms of generating support in the future. And I understand how this can be, right? Because our biggest donors and our biggest supporters are often, by definition, they're more advanced in age, right? By definition, and that's great. And the support from our loyal people who have been with us for a long period of time is really, really important. But often the experiences that we create to steward those people are different from the experiences that some of the younger people want. And if we don't recognize that and invest in some of the things we need to do to get younger people more engaged, we're going to have a problem in the future. And it'll be a significant one. So I think paying attention to that is really important, right? So, what we're trying to do with our board is we'll have a lot of our longtime loyal supporters on our board, but also a spot for a young alum representative and ideally a fundraising and engagement infrastructure that's intended to work directly with people who are at the front ends of their careers. And I just think it's really, really, really important if you look at the long-term horizon for our industry.
Critical. Yes.
Yeah. And the hard part is it's in the moment, and I've talked a little bit about this before, in the moment our sort of short-term financial and operational fortunes are based on how well we steward and service our current supporters and customers. So diverting resources away from that is a really difficult thing to do. And putting our resources that would be ordinarily used on sort of on current, our best supporters and customers in the current day, and diverting those to future customers where the ROI in the short term is a lot less, that's a really, really difficult thing to do. But over time, I think that we will see that if we don't develop those future customers now, that we're going to have problems in the future. And the technology term for that is the innovator's dilemma. But it's a dynamic that I think is a little bit underappreciated because of all the short-term challenges. And I'm learning this. Like every day, there's a new challenge in the AD's office, and it takes a lot of discipline to try to think forward and develop a long-term strategy that has a low present ROI, but in the long term, it's absolutely critical. Really, really hard.
Yeah, really hard, but hard and rewarding, I think, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been fantastic, and look forward to seeing all the things that you do as you continue on your way.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.